Okay, so to start, I'll just watch through your video and like make comments. So you start off pretty strong, but like the first thing I can mention is your Loomis method circle. The circle is supposed to be like, it's supposed to be a circle. This is a bit too oval. And then your guides are not symmetrical. So, um, sorry, let me actually open. I have Krita open here. When I say your guides aren't symmetrical, it's like, uh, just 1 second. Yeah, so when I say your guides aren't symmetrical, they're kind of done like this. Give me a sec. Like you're doing them like this when instead it should be more central. At least depending on where you want the face to head, the face to face, basically the head to face. You can have, so this does kind of still look like a three-quarter view, but I'm gonna just assume that you are trying to do a full front. And when you're doing the full front, you're going to take your circle and divide it like that into nice quarters. This line up here is too high up, and that's probably why your eyes are all the way up there. And that's going to affect your final drawing. Um, if from the videos that I sent, I'm pretty sure they talked about like thinking of the head like as a sphere. So basically, it's a circle and it has curvature. So if this is the front facing view, if the person was three-quarter view facing, then the line would actually like curve on the surface. It would curve like this. And I can see you doing that curvature here um, with that line. So say for example, the person is kind of looking down and they're three-quarter, then yeah, they would have like the curve to represent that the to represent where the head is facing. So this shows like the person is facing this way. You know, if you extend the line, it goes like that. But from your drawing, it's not clear, and then this line is not actually in the center depicting where the eyes would go, because the eyes should fall more or less at the like halfway point of this circle. You know, actually they should fall on the halfway point of the head. My anatomy is rusty, but if your line is wrong, then your eyes are going to be placed wrong. So you have to be careful about where you're putting it. And you should also think about the curvature of whatever you're drawing, because that's going to determine which direction the person is facing at the end of the day. And it helps you draw faces at like different angles, you know. So just be mindful that the head curves, and that if you're doing it facing front, as front facing, then you should divide it into equal quarters, and then you can add now your your jawline and your chin and everything else, all the nice things in the middle. But if you don't get your guidelines right the first time, it's going to mess your final drawing. So just moving on with the drawing as well, your nose is placed a bit too high. So usually the nose will be placed like here, but from your drawing it's placed like slightly above. That's going to lengthen like her jaw, so you can see it's long. Um, Also, I was saying like you have a good start where you already have the guidelines, but if the guidelines are placed in the wrong place, then your overall drawing will not come out the way you want it to. So you want to spend a lot more time in the sketching phase and even like with the guidelines and stuff before you get into rendering and doing all these small details in the hair and like the eyelashes and the little bits of the nose, so that when you actually getting to like here where you're inking, everything is in the correct place and you've ironed out all the issues. Also make sure to like flip your canvas. I don't know if like Clip Studio Paint allows you to do that, but flipping your canvas lets you see like irregularities. Like you can see over here, this is not, it's not symmetrical in the right way. So like when I flip, it like looks weird. So I'll just come and like try and make it as symmetrical as the other side while flipping my canvas back and forth. And that helps me make my drawing more appealing, rather than if I don't flip the canvas and I can't see those errors because like I'm focusing on it in like one view, and then the drawing comes out badly because I haven't bothered with flipping. Yeah. So you also flip your canvas and focus on like this stage, this between here and here. You should be taking a lot more time to iron out like where the anatomy sits and everything. Don't be afraid to like do multiple layers. Like you can have like 3 or 4 layers of just sketch, and you're like, you create one layer, you're like, okay, there's this, but I don't like some things in it. So you make a new layer, lower the opacity, and then like do some editing on top of that to make it look better. And nobody's going to stop you, because I mean, it's your drawing and it's your tablet and it's up to you to do what you want to do with it to make it work. So just take your time, don't rush, and don't worry about iterating. Iterating is a very important part because it helps you like decide, oh, I wanted to do this thing because of this and it came out like this instead, so what should I do to make it look better? And that'll guide how your drawing turns out at the end. So spend a lot of time in the sketching phase, spend a lot of time um, following those guides for anatomy. So you can have like a picture open of your this is when you should have your references open and actually reference them. So you're like, oh, I know I want this person to look like this and I want their eyes to look like this. So spend a lot of time in the sketching phase creating more layers and more layers. Not, you don't have to create like an infinite number of layers, but just enough layers that you feel comfortable with where everything is, enough to say that like, yeah, this is as close to what I want the final piece to embody, and now I can actually start finalizing the lines. Don't jump to line art too fast, is what I'd say, before you finish like this whole phase of sketching it out. And then when you're doing, let me go back. I hope I'm giving proper critique. Yeah, there's this thing that you do where like I can see you try and use like a soft airbrush here, and then it doesn't work out for your line, so you switch to like this pen, this ink pen, and that's good, recognizing like and testing out the different tools that you can use. But I'd like to comment on your lines. You see, as you're drawing your lines, they're very sketchy. So depending on what, like, this is again like an art choice. It's an art style choice. You can want your lines to come out um, more sketchy, or you can want them to be more clean, kind of like anime. And I personally like something in between, and that's why uh, I use this pen, which is like a pencil, and I also use this, and it allows me to like have more control over my lines and make them as sketchy or as clean as I want them to be. Please don't judge my anatomy. I haven't run in a while, and I know I'm explaining at the same time, but I'm doing my best. I'm really trying my best. But yeah, this is just for like illustrative purposes of like, you sketch it out. You're like, I like this. I like this here. I'd like her eyes to be closed, and I want her to have like a button nose. So like you see, I'm sketching out where the anatomy is before I'm like, okay, this is how I want it to look, and then adding those pieces. Um, I'm gonna add some big eyebrows, just vaguely, and then I know like the hairline should be like somewhere up here. So I have not added ears. So normally I spend like a lot of time. So if my anatomy looks like it's clean, it's because I've spent like an hour. I spend a lot of time in the sketching phase. I can spend more time sketching than I do actually doing the line art. and then I spend a lot of time also rendering because that's something which I've recently learned how to enjoy and I'm getting into. So you don't have to like copy what I'm doing right now. And I also know I'm not like doing it in your art style, I'm doing it more in mine. So it's what you're comfortable with, but make sure you know your fundamentals. Your fundamentals will help you a lot, especially when you feel like something doesn't look right, then that means you've forgotten about your fundamentals and you need to go back. That's my recommendation. So if I find like I'm really struggling like with these lips, I'll go and look up a picture of like lips that look similar to how I want the character's lips to look like, and I'll pull up the picture and I'll put it like right here, and I'll reference it as I'm drawing to make sure that it looks as accurate as I want it to be. So yeah, so you can see I've spent a lot of time here, and I'm like changing things. I have layers underneath that I'm not necessarily using, but I'm still referencing like this line and where I put the nose before, and where I'd initially put the jawline and then I didn't like it, where I put the neck and how I already like the neck being there. I'm also I'm fleshing it out and not being so precious about like where the lines are because I know I'm gonna go over them later. I'm just trying to capture the essence of it at the very least. So she has very soupy hair. A tip for drawing hair is think of the big shapes. I think that's what you already did here, where you like for example what you do right here in this corner where you like draw just one big shape and then this general shape. Try and avoid like for hair doing like bits and pieces to like represent stuff. It especially with African hair, if you're trying to draw African characters, they really benefit from like big shapes that just they they benefit from big shapes. I really like drawing African hair because you can just do something like can do something like I want this guy to have the typical like Miles Morales afro. I'll do it like this. I'll draw the big shape or whatever and say like, okay, that's how I want it to be, and then follow the hairline wherever it's going, add in some ears, yada yada. So you see it's like the big shape, and then to make it more organic, I'll just squiggle and erase some of the edges. You can do that with like a lot of hair, a lot of different hair types. Just having that big shape also helps with like your expression and your gesture of the character. So keep that in mind. Um, this is not making sense here. So I'm just going to erase. Use the eraser tool like preciously. I haven't reached that point where I'm like very comfortable. I have reached a point where I'm comfortable not erasing for the most part. But once in a while, I'll erase like a part which I don't like just to make room for a line which will be much better in the future. You don't have to do it that way. It's just like one of the very many methods that I've seen people using. So you see, I'm focusing on like the general shape and flow of her hair. I'm not going like this is where the hair is supposed to be, and these are all the like strands. I'm saying more of I know that the shape language would be really nice if she had like a bigger thing on this side. So that's what I add there. Then I add little soups, but I'm keeping the idea of like the hair being this kind of like her head is here and it's like making this it in general it's making this shape if I'm being honest, like a diamond shape, yeah. So I'm focusing on that shape and then bringing it into this. um so you can see that if this is enough information for you, that's okay, but I'd recommend you try and add more information in the sketch phase. I think I've said this already like 50 times, but focus more on this between here and here. Get everything, as much information down as you can, so that when you get here, you're doing the lines and you know where they already are. You don't have to struggle here the way it's like you draw this line and then you erase it because you're not happy with it, and then you do two lines for the chin, then you do another line. You see, it's much easier if you have all the lines down like this. And then let me finish off her hair, just adding a hairline. I don't know if that's how her hairline is different. Let me, yeah, something like that. Now I'm just saying, like, I'm done with my sketch. Flip the canvas a few more times just to make sure. I know her eyes are very uneven. So I'm gonna try and fix that just a little bit. I'm gonna try adding like a few more details to her face to make her seem more alive. Um, there's a thing for stylization where if you add more details to a person's face, if you add more details to something, the more realistic it tends to look. So if depending on what you want to achieve in your drawing, if you want something more stylized, you can keep lines simple. If you want something more realistic, then you add more lines. I think you understand that already from like your your traditional work. Yeah. So I'm happy with how that looks. I'm gonna like maybe imply shadows under her chin just to add some like sense of volume, that her head is like overlapping. Is it sense of volume or form? Volume, volume. Um, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm done, but I don't like where her hair is meeting here, so I'm gonna erase that a little bit and just give it a bit of a better shape. Yeah, and maybe like a little wisp over there just to give her some character. Um, I hope I haven't missed any other details. She looks like she's kind of smiling, so I want to add that to the mouth. I'm just going to tilt that up a bit, and it gives me an opportunity to give her like a little bit more definition in the lips. Normally, I wouldn't like do this as dark because when I'm trying to do the inking phase, I won't know, is the line like, is the line here? Is it here? You know. So I avoid making things this dark, but I'm just doing it right now because it's like an easy, quick way to like demonstrate what I want to say. But try and like make your lines, um, try and be intentional with your lines, even if it's a sketching phase. Once again, because it will help you. So now I like lower the opacity, and you'll notice like all the layers kind of have a similar opacity. Maybe if I decide that this layer isn't as important anymore, I'll hide it completely because it was the guidelines. And then I'll add my next layer, and I'll even like take the opacity down really, really far until like I almost can't see it. And this helps you if you've ever done your sketch and it doesn't look like your if you've ever done your inking and it doesn't look like your final piece, I'd recommend trying to stick as close to your sketch as humanly possible, especially if you really like your sketch. One of the things I learned early on when I was doing like art or like digital art specifically is we tend to like try and add new things. We're still like trying to sketch while we're inking, but no, that's what the sketching phase is for. It's supposed to be where you throw down all your ideas and all your hopes and dreams and sorry, and you go and experiment in the sketching phase. Don't experiment in the inking phase. The inking phase should be you putting down the final lines and being like, yes, this is what I intended to say with this line, and this is what I intended it to look like. So I don't know. I was just curious about her shoulders. It feels like a vibe if she was like leaning like this. But I don't know. It would be like a nice gesture for her. Um, yeah, moving on to inking. Now I can see here, as I was mentioning before, your inking, your lines are very sketchy and scratchy. which is okay if it's intentional. That's the key word, is if it's intentional. What I would recommend though, because is you try and practice having your lines in like single swoops if you can. I also really struggle with like the single swoop thing. I don't like the whole, oh, you have to repeat your lines over and over again. So what I usually do, as I mentioned, is I use like this brush and I can come in and erase the edges to make them as pointy as I want them to be. But it depends on you and, like, once again, as I said, the style that you're going for. Just reset that. Um, it depends on you and the style that you're going for. If you're going for more scratchy lines, you can use a more scratchy brush. If you're going for more um, clean anime lines, you can go for an ink pen. If you're going for a more cartoony style, you can use like a hard round brush with no, line variation. So that's how usually people generate their style digitally, as far as I've seen, is like you decide the kind of line weight you want and the kind of feeling you want your picture to evoke, and then you pick the tools that actually evoke that feeling. So I really like the sketchy one. I'm just going to use it because I'm very comfortable with it. Now you see, I'm not like creating new lines, I'm just following the lines that I already had before. And there's a really nice inking video I watched when I was really struggling with inking, and it helped me. I should share it as well. But it just basically recommended that if you're struggling to like end your lines exactly where they need to be, don't be afraid to go past where they're supposed to be and then just erase. And I took that a step further, and because I use this more scratchy brush, I can even go in and like edit my lines to look like they were supposed to look a certain way that you can't really achieve by just like doing the single swoop lines. So yeah, I'm spewing a lot of stuff. I hope you're keeping up. If you have any questions, you can just ask me like later when I share the video. So yeah, now I'm going exact. You can see I'm going exactly where my sketch lines were, and I'm not really thinking right now. I'm just following. Of course, there are like some places where I didn't do stuff, so I have to now go and quickly add to them. But I'm still keeping the um, initial sketch lines. I'm keeping true to that. So now I go here and do like the hair, following the giant shape, and it makes your life so much easier because like all your thinking is done, all your worrying about anatomy is done in the sketch phase. So now when you come here, you're cleaning up, you're saying this is exactly what I intended when I sketched out this line, this is how I wanted it to look, and this is what it's going to look like. So yeah, I don't like this way of doing like liner because I don't like erasing. I'm very stubborn on that, and I was stubborn until like I found my own way of doing it. You'll find like people will be telling you, "Oh, do it this way," and you'll be like, "I don't want to do it that way." So, what way do you want to do it? And it'll come to you naturally, but focus on the fundamentals first is the best thing I can recommend for you. It'll When you know the rules, you can break the rules. Is basically what I'm saying. So I'm just adding like a little bit of detail here because I noticed like it'll look kind of weird where her ears join her head. Um, Now I'm gonna just do the ears real quick. I'm not gonna like focus on them too much. But like there are plenty of really good videos about anatomy out there if you're struggling with that. Um, I also still struggle with anatomy. I spend a lot of time like, but like references really saved me, and I really like using them. I just didn't collect any references for this because I was going to just focus on your drawing. So like for a good example of what I mean when I say your lines are scratchy is like you do this a lot, and that shows this is very unsure. It's like you're not showing exactly what you do. you're not being intentional about where you're placing the lines. Instead, try and do, you see, one stroke, one line. And that'll help your lines look more confident. Don't be afraid to undo. Don't be afraid to pass the place where you want to go and then come back and erase it. Don't be afraid to also flip your canvas if that helps you like draw a line better. You will also see me breaking my rules when I get frustrated. But that's how I learned, and I think it's also like a very good way to learn. That's why I'm recommending it. I've just realized her face is very wonky. So I'm gonna just do what I do. The reason why I really like this pencil brush for line art is you see how like it seamlessly flows um into the next line. So it kind of looks like it's a single line, but it's not. But you have to be very careful with it. It's it's hard to do, and that's how I used to do line art as a traditional artist, and that's why it's like carried over to my digital art, but it's not recommended. It's kind of frowned upon in the digital art space. But it makes it easier for me to do like some of these swooping lines. I personally think that if I had like a screen tablet, I'd be able to get these lines easier because I can see where my hand is going and get the lines to look exactly how I want them to. But for now, this is my little hack. Don't do as I do as I say, though. So I like doing this, and then I can come and like carve out the line exactly how I wanted it to. And that's why I actually even I use my sketch as my line art. I just like merge the layers together and then I clean it up as I go and I add color and stuff. And that works for me. But it's not like a good place to start as a beginner. It's something that I kind of just hodgepodge together as I drew over the years, and it works for me really well. But as I said, you will find what works for you down the line as you keep practicing. It's a lot of trial and error, which is why people say like which is why people find it very hard to tell you how to like create an art style. Also, another thing you can do as you're sketching is like you turn off your sketch layer just to see like it still stands up as your line art stands up as its own. I don't like how thin these lines are, so I'm just gonna come back and go over them to make them a bit darker. Then I once again, this is just like something that I do. This is how I do it. It's not recommended. It's just easy for me, and you'll find your own shortcuts as you go along. Like especially with Clip Studio Paint, I know there are like 3D models that you can even use um, to make your work flow slower. But if you want to be a really good artist, you'll try and like learn it the hard way, find your shortcuts as you go along, and then you'll be good at it. I don't know what I was thinking here. This doesn't look right. Does not look right. So just do that for now. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, the line art looks fine as it is without the other stuff. Just checking in quickly, flipping the canvas once in a while as usual, rotating the canvas. That's why like digital art is so good. You can what sorry. My brain freezes sometimes. You can manipulate your drawing in so many ways, and there are so many different tools that you'll find that everybody has their own like special way um, of working, and I think that's really cool. So this is just I might be telling you some things here, and you find out that they don't work for you, and that's completely fine. You can go and like find what actually does work for you and implement it in your drawing. You don't have to do it my way. But these are just like some tips I noticed really helped me as a beginner artist. Once again, I'm doing this more in my own style. So if you see something and you're like, no, I prefer to draw the eyes in a different way, you can do that. But make sure you already know the fundamental anatomy of how an eye works, that it's a sphere on the face in a socket, and the socket causes like the face to deform in specific ways. It casts shadows in a, in different ways, etc. Like understanding all of that will really help you then manipulate what you know and create your own personal art style that people can recognize you for. Like for me, people recognize me by how I draw ears, and it wasn't like intentional to begin with. I just like learned that ears are like a sphere, and sometimes you can draw them as like a little six, not a sphere, but like a kind of like a plate. I think of them as a plate, and you can draw them as just like a little circle with a number six on it. And I thought that was really cute, and that's what I did for all my drawings. And then suddenly people are like, "Oh, that's your art style." And I'm like, "What do you mean my art style? What do you mean you can recognize my art in a specific style?" And yeah, the rest is history. So I'm still flipping the canvas. I'm zooming in as far as I need to go and zooming out when I need to, and just making sure like I'm putting the lines where I want them to be. Once again, just take your time. Nobody is rushing you, especially if this is like practice stuff. Even if it's stuff you're posting online, don't like feel the pressure of like, oh, it has to be just so, it has to be this good for people to like it. People will like it if they like it. And you should, I personally think you should find more fun in the creating rather than the posting, but I can understand like needing to have it as a job to earn money, to secure your life, etc. But try and also like find enjoyment in it if you can. So now you see, like, I already have the big shape, the big diamond shape that I was talking about. And now I'm like, I've broken it out into like now medium shapes, which is like this thing, this piece of hair in front, and these other like small medium sized things, and then like the small bits are this. So there's this concept in art called big, medium, small, and it helps with like your stylization and appeal. So if you find your things aren't looking appealing, try and look at like the fundamental shapes that build up what you've created and see how you can now vary and distribute those shapes. But that's a more complex topic, like it's a more intermediate discussion to have. And you really need to have the fundamentals down before you can do that, because like now you'll be varying, you'll be taking what you've already learned and varying it so that it looks appealing and so that it fits a specific style. And if you don't understand how those things work and how they look in 3D and they're different like forms and things, then you're gonna have like such a hard time actually using those concepts of like big, medium, small. If you get what I mean. So I'm just like adding like little wisps and things because I'm like, oh, that would be like really nice to have. Now that like the fundamentals are taken care of, where I know her face is there, it's in the right place, she has like the whole eyes, ears, nose thing going on. No bits are missing unless I want them to be missing. I can now start adding like the little bits of like interest that I want. So I thought it would be interesting if her hair had like these little kind of feather like things, as well as the lines to show strands. I thought that would be nice. That's just like me being now I can make like artistic choices. Yeah, in summary. Um, yeah, I think that's okay. So back now you see that's the line art, and then I can turn off the sketch and it still like stands on its own. Of course, there's some things which I'm like I really liked in the sketch that I want to have, so now I can go and add them. Can be like, okay, this thing where it like just suggests where her shoulders are. and gives her like a little feeling of like she's not just, you know, a floating head in space. But that's my personal preference. I like the little, I really like this, but I don't know how to add it. So maybe I'll just do like little lines like this. Now you see I'm adding more detail, which makes her more realistic. So I have to like balance it out with like, I'm making her look more realistic, but am I like taking away from the appeal of the drawing? And if it does, then is there something else I can remove to retain that appeal? So I'm gonna remove like the indentations for her eyes, but maybe like add them back a bit because like it shows the shape. And then I think because she's looking down, it would be nice to like add eyelashes. Um, like her eyes are closed, sorry, not looking down, but like her eyes are closed, it would be nice to add like eyelashes to even like show the shape of the eyeball. Like we have the eyeball like this, and the eyelid wraps around it. So now I'm just saying like when the eyelid is closed, it's kind of pointing downwards. So the eyelashes, which kind of like already stick out from the eye, would now be facing down like this. So just adding um, a kind of adding some suggestions that her eyelashes are like that gives it more form, even if I'm still drawing in a stylized way. And I can decide where I want them to go. If having, there's a point where it'll be too many and it'll look weird. Like it's kind of looking weird right now. I'm like, do I want to sacrifice the eyelashes to make it look more normal or more appealing? And the answer is yes. So I'm going to remove these ones and keep the ones on the outside. Yeah. And maybe this one I'll turn it to face a bit more outwards like the other one. Then I'm like, yeah, I like that. But since this is the fine art stage, I have to get it like just so, just right, because it wasn't part of the sketch. Yeah, I like that so far. And I can see like there's the shadow under her neck, which I really wanted to add, but that comes to our next phase. Let me just check. Yeah, so I can see you're adding shadow like right here. But again, your shadows are very scratchy. You're not being intentional about where you're placing them. So it would be good to be like, yes, I want the shadow here above her eyes. I want it here, and I want it here, and I want it on her hair. But before you put shadows, make sure you know where your light is coming from. That's a very important thing. Got to know where the light is coming from. So I would recommend don't use an airbrush. You've noticed this entire time the only brush that I've used which has some opacity is this. And actually the only brush I've used this entire time is this one, and that's because I like that quality in my lines. But if you're gonna do shadows, I'd recommend just using this, the basic round brush. All you need is a new layer and like multiply. So normally what you would do is, I know I've done this badly because I'm supposed to make sure well, there are no gaps. But what you do is you'd fill in your base layer with like a base color. You'd have a base layer and that has your like base color. So usually people do is like, what people do is like they do the skin tone. And if you've done it right, which I have not, you should be able to like select the outside, or like if you've done it smart. It's not like the right way, it's like the smart way to do it, because there are many other ways to do it. You can use the select tool, select the outside, and then just use the paint bucket tool to fill that layer. The paint bucket tool being this guy. Um, but since I have a lot of, you see these open spaces, if I select, it's going to like select even the outside. It won't select like just the inside shape. So I have to manually color it in. I'm really worried that this video is going to be long, and that's why I wanted like a video call instead, because it's going to be very difficult to send, but it's okay. I will figure out a way. So yeah, give me a sec. I'm gonna do a pause for water and hydration because my voice is starting to crack. Yeah. So now I'm just I'm doing this very roughly, but if it was like a more, for my more finished pieces, I take my time. I go really slowly and make sure like I get just right under the line work, because you'll find like if you do more realistic rendering, which I've been learning how to do, if it doesn't go right under your line work and you do like some kind of effects on the line work so that it like maybe a multiply or an overlay, so then it's going to make your, it won't look as good, and you'll be able to like see where the you'll be able to see like if I lower, let me lower the opacity of this, you see where it's like here it's doing this jagged thing, like this is my base layer. So if I don't go right until the edge, when I put an effect on the line art layer, it's gonna look weird. But since this is just like a basic, you know, basic demonstration, I don't really have to take that time to do all those details. And that's again more intermediate stuff, more high level stuff once you've gotten your fundamentals down. Once you're able to like sketch and have the anatomy in the right place and all the pieces in the way you want them to. And when I say anatomy in the right place, I don't mean you're doing like the the artists of old, like Leonardo da Vinci or Da Vinci, whichever one, or Michelangelo. I just mean like it looks right. The appeal is there. If you're doing stylization, the stylization makes sense. You know, you have your pieces, you have your sketch well made. Like your sketch is done. And if you have your sketch done, you've basically done like half of the drawing. And that's something that I didn't learn until like recently. And learning it was like my whole world was changed. And I wish that's something I wish I'd learned earlier. So yeah, I have my base colors in, and Creator has group layers. I think in Clip Studio Paint it's like alpha layers, but this allows me now to clip things onto, okay, Creator has alpha layers and group layers, or like alpha lock. I don't know what it's called, but this allows me to like now that's not what I wanted to do. Let's pick this. Yeah, now if I want to do shadows, I can draw and it doesn't like go outside. So I can pick like a shadow color. Actually, first of all, before we do that, let's do a good base color. Let's do a good base color. So I see your theme is pink and it's this shade of pink. So I can pick, it's a bit more muted than what I have. Yeah, something like that. And that's our base layer. I need to, oop, no, that's not what I want to do. I need to color this in because it doesn't seem to have been selected. Yeah, so I've filled in my base layer with my, sorry, I filled in the base layer with the color that I want, and then now I want to do, let's say I want to do shadows. But to be honest with you, if it was me, I wouldn't start with like, okay, I mean, I do that once in a while, where I do the, I like fill in the base layer, I leave it white, or like whatever bright color. I leave it white and then I do the shadows next. So let's go that route. That's also like a viable option. But I like doing like you do the color first, you do the base colors first. So I would now, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around a lot, but what I would recommend is you learn more about cell shading, kind of the way anime does it. So where it's like just flat colors. Let's see what shade of her hair. Her hair is like, I can also see you jumping around between like different tools, and then you like what right here. Um, I think you need more method to your madness. So like madness in like a more endearing term, not in like any offensive way. Just um, how you be more intentional. I think I've said that already, but yeah, have a process already down. It's fun to experiment, yes, But if you want your work to come out looking in a specific way, you're going to have to start using a process. And then I even see like you come back to the lines here again. There's something you're doing. I'm not clear on it. There's just a lot of stuff happens between here and here, and it doesn't contribute to the look of the end piece. And it's hard to tell exactly what you're trying to achieve with that. But like here, I can see between here and like here, I can see there's a process. And then here, you change your mind about it and start using the airbrush. But I recommend you have a method. So a method I would recommend is the typical anime cell shading. It's a really good starting point, and it helps you like figure out lighting and shadows before they get difficult. So you do basically what I've done, where you do your sketches in their different various layers until you get it the way you want it to look, and then you finally create a new layer and you lower the opacity of your sketch layer and then do lines on top of it. After you do that, you color in, like you do your base layer, fill it with like a base color or like the general color that you want the overall piece to look like, and then on top of that use clipping masks or alpha layers or whatever and add the other colors to your piece. So we have like another color is her hair, which is this deeper pink. So we just fill that in, chop chop. Once again, as I said, I feel like this video is very long and I'm gonna probably have to upload it somewhere for it to be sent, but that's the problem for in another 5 minutes me, or in another like 30 minutes. I don't know how long this video is, and I'm sorry if it's very long. Yeah, so you see, fill in the colors, just like block them in. This is what people usually, you hear when somebody says, oh, I blocked in the colors, this is what they mean. Block in the colors. So we have the hair, and then like since we already have the hair down, I'm gonna just do, and color theory is a whole other topic on its own, but you're basically using monochrome a monochrome color scheme because you're just using all pinks, and that's a good color scheme to have if you want to, like, I like monochrome color schemes because they're simple and they help me. So what I'm basically doing is I've realized like there's the pink of her hair and her lips also need to be pink. I noticed you make them red later on, but I'm just gonna make them pink, and I'm just taking the same pink from her hair and putting it on her lips because I know that will be more cohesive than picking a color from, now going and finding a new color. It'll like make things blend in more. I think I've colored in her hair. There's like, you can see like all these little gaps and whatever, and that's because I haven't done like my base layer as cleanly. So it's doing that. But it's okay. If you have more time, you can go in and like just clean them. Another thing I could even do is, because I want the focus to be on her face, and this is just still another color theory thing, is I can color her shirt the same color. So her face stands out as the palest, as the lightest point, as a place of like lightest value um, in the picture. So your eyes are naturally drawn to her face. Now that her shirt and her hair aren't competing, her shirt isn't no longer competing for like the same color. So this is basically cell shading. If you had her eyes, maybe you could like make a new layer and do her eyes. If she had like, if there are more details, like if she had flowers in her hair, you'd also still do like a new layer and then like do the flowers in her hair as you want them to be on that new layer, and that gives you like more control over like what happens. Be Just like make sure you use your layers. It's not a good idea to like merge all the layers before you have all the things down. It's similar to how before you start lining your piece, have multiple layers of sketches, as many as you need to get the thing looking as close to what you want the final thing to look like. I'm rambling now. So we've gotten the base colors in. Next, what we can do, and this is the place where this is the like one place I would pull out the airbrush, is to like do some, let's do some skin variation. So like it's nice to add some color to the skin, because for at least humans and creatures with blood and skin like ours, let me just use humans. For humans, like, you'll notice there's usually like blush to the cheeks, and it's not, it just, you can go without it, but I find it adds like some more character and makes a person look more alive. So if I even like turn it off, you see she's already looking more alive. And you can paint it in as dark as you want it to on like this separate layer, and then reduce it, reduce the opacity, or change like, or change the effect to get it looking how you want it to. So I can use this now to like give more depth to the bottom lip without having to draw the lines of the bottom lip, if you get what I mean. So I can come here and look at like multiply. Does that work? It makes her look more pink. Overlay, what does that look like? It's very pale and saturated. Screen is usually used for light. Luminosity, it does weird things unless it's like a very bright color. Color dodge, also strange. Color, not doing much. So I'll just go with, I think I'll go with multiply, and I'll like reduce it to a place where you can still see it, but it's not too obvious. So that looks good to me. Now, usually if I've done that, and I think I'll add some to like her eyelids. Um, I think I'll make her eyelids darker so it kind of looks like she has makeup, but she doesn't. But it like, now you see there's like a little bit of variation on that pale, on the face, on the pale face. Yeah, I think that looks okay. I haven't done it as cleanly as I would like, but it's there. And I can come in and even like erase some places just to give it, to separate the spaces a bit more. I'm not doing it as cleanly as I would like, to be honest with you, but it's part of the process. Now, if you, when you have more time, you just come and you take your time, do it pole pole, feel out what you like, feel out what you don't like, make those decisions. That's why you're an artist. You get to, you make specific decisions that result in things that look the way you want them to, even if people don't necessarily understand, but it creates that effect. So another thing that I really like doing is adding gradients. It helps add variation without you doing a lot of the work. So normally what I do is like, if I want the gradient to appear on only a specific place, I'll add like a group layer, and then add that layer to that group layer, and then make sure that the group layer, this is how it works in Creator. You have to like make the overall layer the one which is like the alpha or the clipping mask, and then everything else inside it will just like map automatically. So to add gradients, I do like a multiply layer, and then I select the gradient tool, and then I pick the, that color that I want the gradient of, and then I just, you know, I apply it where I want it to. I think I need this to be radial, and I kind of want it to be smaller because I want it to appear on the hair only. I only want it to appear on the hair. So since I only want it to appear on the hair, I'm going to turn on alpha. So you see now her hair has depth in it. It's not just like one color. Then I'll also like pick the same color, go maybe to a, actually I can even pick her skin color and come, oops, that's not a good idea. I can pick a skin color, create a new layer because this is already set to multiply. Let me see what happens if I set it to normal. Normal, you won't see anything. So overlay, overlay, that's actually a really cool effect, to be honest with you. I like that, but like let's let's go multiply. Maybe I can make another layer, which is, yeah, I like that. So you can play around. You see the power that layers gives you. It's like there's so much you can do. You can even add like a luminosity layer on top of that, but like we won't do that. So I'm gonna take this layer and let me say I'm gonna add like a screen, and I'm gonna put it on top, but I don't like how the screen looks, so I'm gonna try, what about overlay? So that she has like a bit of light coming in over there, but I don't like that. Let's see, vivid light, no, so that still looks cool. Luminosity, yeah, I think luminosity is the best. But yeah, now you see her hair has so much variation in it, and it like completely changes it from just being this by itself, one block of color, to being this, something which has so much, like it feels more solid and deeper than just if it's just one flat color. Yes. And that is basically what I would do for coloring. And then now I can go into lighting. So for lighting, once again, you just create a new layer, and it helps if you label the layers. I have not been doing that. So properties, this is our hair layer. Let's just say hair. You can even go inside those layers and label them for what they are. So this is like, let me see, oh, that's not the layer I wanted to label. So properties, and then I see skin detail, or like blush. And then this is our base layer. Right? So we have all of those layers. You can come in and edit them how you see fit, yada yada. Get her to look, get the base without any light, without any of that shenanigans, looking the way you want it. And then now we can go into actual lighting. So lighting is complicated, or like there's a lot to lighting. I'm not gonna say it's complicated. There are various ways you can do it. You can either like cover the whole thing in shadow and then carve out the light, or you can cover the thing in light and then carve out the shadows. That depends on you. What I usually do is I'll have like a multiply layer or an overlay layer, and I'll pick, if the painting is warm, I'll typically I'll typically go for like a cool color, and you can test out how it is. So, sorry, before we go into that, think about where your lighting is coming from. So, here, you can't really tell where the light is coming from. Is it coming from straight on because she has very shiny, these lights make her, these white lines make her skin look shiny? Is it coming from, if we go even back farther, it seems to be coming from like, you see, I can't really tell. It seems to be coming from this angle, but like there's shadows on top of her eyelids, which doesn't make sense if it's coming from above, and there's shadows on top of her like jaw. Also, it doesn't make sense if the light is coming from up, but it's not coming from down because there's shadows under her eyes, and also, sorry, on her hairline. And I've just realized her hair is actually like different from what I've sketched it. I am so sorry. I've kind of cut her hair. Let me go back and quickly add some pigtails. Or, yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why I didn't realize that that was there. So I'm gonna try and like mimic, just like quickly adding this in. I'm gonna still try and mimic like what she already has up there. And I'm gonna also, I think I'll bring like one of the pigtails like slightly in front of her shoulder. Not recommended, don't do this. It's confusing. Would not recommend. I think I can do that. Right. Yeah. So she has her kind of like pigtails or like curly hair. Can add some little lines to show curls and like some variation so that her hair isn't just one big lump. It actually has shape and form and all those good things that we like to see. And once again, you can see how I'm carving out a bigger shape to make medium shapes and smaller shapes, and that um, helps your drawing. I want to do something here, but like I've kind of already, yeah, I think that's okay. Kind of want both sides to look the same or like similar in style. I think adding one of those and adding one of these and giving it a little bit of that. Yeah, can hear my laptop starting to overheat because of the recordings after. But yeah, let me go in and erase. Yeah. Yeah. So that's not super clean, but at least now she has that other part of her hair. So now I can come in. Now you see, because like I put everything on different layers, I can come in and turn off the things that I don't need, head back to the base layer, and color it in. Easy peasy, just like that. Without having to now stress about like, oh no, I've already gotten so far and I've already painted everything in. If I start like erasing stuff and trying to paint over it, it's gonna mess it up, you know. So use layers to your advantage. Very, very helpful. Do that, do that, and then like clean up the edges so it's not too obvious that this is done quickly. Oops, not what I wanted to do, but yeah, I think that's done. So now she does, I can go, let me just quickly fix some of the things which were really bugging me. Um, so now when I'm coming back to color them in, they're no longer irritating me. Yeah, so I can just easy peasy lemon squeezy. I turn on all these other things, and I know like the skin detail, the only thing which is being affected is the hair and the shot. So what I can do is go pick this color and then just color in the hair, just like that. And the nice part is like these effects are being applied as I'm coloring it in, so I don't have to worry about coming in and like, unless it's like grievously bad, I'm not worrying about coming back to color it in. I'm okay with it looking like that. Maybe I'll come back here, and I know this layer is just the same color, so I'm gonna take the airbrush because I don't want it to be super obvious. I'm just gonna shade in those bottom bits of the hair that kind of missed out. Is that really the color that I want? I want this one. Yeah, so like that. Just so it's more cohesive now. Yeah, so there we go. Actually, I think what I would like to add, what would be really nice, is like a little bit of gradient down here, so her hair has a little more variation to it, like that. And I like how that looks. So now that we fixed that mistake, we come back to shadows. I would pick a color that complements, maybe something that complements this, or is just or is like analogous, um, which means it's like around next to it on the color wheel. So maybe let's do like a purple. A purple doesn't seem so bad. Yeah, and I usually I use purples for shadows. I rarely ever use like reds and oranges and greens. I'll usually tend to go blues and purples. I know there's more variation that could be explored. And then now we think about where our light is coming from. So as I was saying, it's not clear where the light is coming from. So you have to pick a place, pick a direction where the light is coming from. So typically the easiest one for me at least is like just like top right or top left or whichever side. Um, I just realized her jaw is off. Now you see, if I had taken more time, her jaw would be aligned. But yeah, so I'm saying like the light is coming from here, which means anything which is like on the opposing side. How do I explain this? If there's something which is blocking the light, if the light hits something, there's gonna be a shadow that's cast. So I can immediately tell that her hair is in the way of this light, so there's going to be a shadow underneath, just directly underneath the hair, right there, right? And it can even like scooch a bit down because it's the hair is lifted off the face, so the shadow that's being cast is kind of away. Then I can also tell this will have a shadow that it's casting down here. I can tell this side of her face will have a shadow because of like the eye socket, etc. And I see you've already gotten that here, where you're suggesting the shadows here. You just need to be more intentional about which direction the shadows are actually coming from and your lines. And I know there'll be a bit of shadow here, but not as much because the light is, on this side. I know for sure there'll be a shadow underneath her nose, and this is like one of the shadows I really like adding because it just Disneyfies your face, the face that you're drawing. I know her lips will have a shadow. Now, this is another one of like, how much detail do you want? You can really go very granular and like specify that it's just on the place where the lips meet that there's a shadow. You can see her whole top lip will be covered in shadow with a little bit of it like spilling over. And that's up to you and like what kind of form you want to create. Then under her bottom lip, there'll be that shadow that I hinted at in my sketch. And then this shadow that I initially wanted to add, but I prefer to add it now here because I don't want it to be sketched out lines the way I have underneath the nose and the lip. I just want it to be I want it to be a color blocked shadow or like a cell shaded. Cell shaded is the correct term for that. I don't want it to be hatched. So yeah, now you see like you can already tell by adding this, I'm adding like a lot of dimension to her face. So if I turn it on and off, you see it's really it's making things look more 3D, even if it's a 2D drawing. I can add like a little bit of shadows. So if this is a detail that you already know, like the eyeball is gonna cast a shadow there, but I don't like how it's making her look kind of older. So I'll forego that shadow. I can add shadows on her ears, inside her ears, and even all over her ears because they're kind of pushed into the background. I'll add shadows underneath these little wisps of hair, and I've realized I didn't color that in oh well. Then I'll add shadows like here because I know like there are cast shadows over there from like the hair in front casting a shadow on the hair in the back. So I'll just quickly add that here. And then since you see this bun is actually behind her shoulder, so nothing is stopping me from like casting the whole thing in shadow. And actually I should do alpha lock. There's nothing stopping me from doing this. And this is like a stylization. This is like up to you, but it pushes her hair into the background, and it gives it a little bit more depth than it normally would have. You can even go a step further and pick like a darker purple and still come into this one which has been pushed into the background and add shadows within the shadow, and that really adds more depth into your drawing. But that's like something you can work on, you can work your way up to. So I also know that this is a piece of hair, so it has depth, and I know like this part is down, so um it's gonna have more shadow, like not a lot of light is reaching there. I can even say like under this lock of hair there's a shadow, and then since I already had a line there, I'm using that as my guide. I can add a shadow here, I can add a shadow here where I was suggesting. And this is about like I'm already thinking about the shapes as they are as I'm adding these shadows, and like the lines that I created in the line art phase and in the sketch phase, that's what's guiding me to add these shadows where I'm adding them to. And also the direction of the light, where if I turn this on, the light is coming from here, so I'm trying to add the shadows where the light wouldn't be hitting, you know so yeah, like that. And I think also her head would cast like a really big shadow on this side of her her face. And then I think I'll add like a bit of shadow like here, and then shadow underneath the ponytail or like the pigtail. I'm really sorry if they're not pigtails and I'm over here just calling them pigtails. Yeah, so something like that. And it adds so much more to the drawing. And that's basically cell shading. You see, like the shadows are blocky. You can come in and like clean them up and make the edges like smoother, or cleaner is the correct term, I believe. Or if you're going to go to rendering, you don't necessarily have to clean them up now. You can clean them up later. Rendering is what I mean when like somebody finishes a drawing to the point where it looks smooth. I don't think that's a good description, but that's the best way I can describe it. It just looks smooth, it looks clean. You can't see like any jagged edges or like places which kind of look like they were sketching it out and then decided to leave the sketch in. And it's what people do for like those portraits which you can't even tell if it's a drawing or not. Yeah, so rendering. Um, Let me just leave that there. I haven't yet gotten to the place where I've mastered like shadows and lighting. Let's reduce this a bit and maybe I can look at like the effects and see what works. To see what you are doing, what you're achieving something softer and more like internal glowing. So I don't want the shadows to be too. I really like the look of that, but like that's not what we're going for. I don't want the shadows to be too dark. So I think we'll do that. And then now we're adding another layer for lighting, and we've already like decided our lighting is coming from there. And what I was trying to say is like I haven't gotten to a place where I like know how to paint in light. I usually use an airbrush and it's really easy and quick where I just like take the airbrush, pick like a yellowish color or like whatever lighting, and I brush it in like that and erase maybe a little bit of that just to give it some more depth. But I know you can actually go more. You can go more specific and even like paint. Okay, there's like the shadows on her forehead, like that place is being hit by light. There's like hair being hit by light. You can paint it in the exact specific places that you want it to go, and that will really help, especially if you're rendering. But that's something which I'm working on currently, so I don't have that much advice for you right now. You can be more specific about it. um, if you're going for more cell shaded, this is just fine. Let me not lie to you, it's just easy peasy lemon squeezy. And then you pick like lighting that works, you know. Weirdly enough, multiply is working there. And sometimes I'll like copy the layer and like pick different effects to make it like shine more if that's what I want. I don't think the multiply layer is helping. Yeah, I think screen is better. And then maybe like let's do a luminosity or vivid light overlay. I don't know, but basically that's that's what I do, and that's when I actually take out the airbrush. Before then, I'm just using like the hard round brush and like the I'm using like the hard round brush and the pencil brush and maybe this ink brush. There was a time I was using it, but I stopped liking what it was doing. But yeah, now you can, if you're good at composition, you can pick where you want the light to go as you're like directing like the viewer's eye to those locations. So the way you were like doing like shiny bits, this is a good place to add them. This is a really good place to add them because now you're actually painting in that light. And I know I said I don't like going specific, but for some reason we're doing it today, so just see how it goes. Can add like something shiny on her lips, make them shinier. Maybe a little bit here, even if it's like in shadow. Yeah, I don't think I've explained that super well. But yeah, in general, lighting, if you want simple lighting, just use a big airbrush and an overlay layer and just paint it in from the general direction that it's coming in from, and you should be fine. Hmm. If you want something easy, you can even leave it at this. Like, this is a complete enough piece on its own. I did see you adding like a tree for an effect in the back, and I also see you change the color of some of these lines and stuff like that. That's why I'm saying there needs to be method to your madness. You need to be intentional about what you're doing, unless you're experimenting just for fun. But if you want to get good at it, maybe follow along with somebody who's doing something, who's doing a drawing. Maybe like, I know Drawfest records their artists doing drawings, or like you might find somebody who's like, draw along with me. So you just follow along with them and try and imitate what they're doing in your own way. Along the way, you'll discover new tools, sorry, and new ways of doing things. And in doing so, you'll be basically stealing like an artist, which will lead you to actually creating your own art style. So that's how, for me personally, I think that's how art styles come about, where you're like stealing little bits and pieces from each artist that you meet. And that at the end of the day creates what the style that you are known for. So I want to like do, I don't know, I'm just thinking about like giving her a bit of a glow, because like I noticed yours had like a glowing feeling to it. I haven't really thought this through. I'm just like adding like some things, hoping it looks okay. I may want to reduce some of the intensity of some of these layers and maybe like clip this there. To me that looks okay. I haven't added any shadows to her shot, so maybe that's why she looks very bland there. And once again, I flip the canvas and realize her jaw is off, and I'm like, it's fine. It's all fine. It's not, but it's fine. But you see, we've gone through the process of like, we've gone through a whole process. We've gone from sketch to a, like now to a second sketch to a third sketch, and when we're done with the third sketch, we lower the opacity of everything all the way down as far as it'll go, turn off the layers we don't need, and then now we do line art. And when we're done with the line art, we can either turn off the sketch or you can keep it. You can actually, for me rendering, when I render, I keep the sketch layer because I usually really like it and it helps me. And then now from the line art layer, we created base layer a base layer, filled it in, did our base color, or like the main color that we want for the piece, and then we went in and did the hair. We blocked in the colors, which was this color, and then we added some effects. We added a multiply layer, and then on top of that, we just copied the same multiply layer and turned it into an overlay layer because it adds this cool neonish effect. And then we added like some soft, pale colors on top of that to give her hair more depth. Then we went even to skin details with like an airbrush, and that's the first time we're using an airbrush. And then we added shadows, just blocking them out with like a purple color on the layer set to multiply, and we vary the opacity until it feels right. Then we did some very basic lighting where we already knew the direction of the lighting based on the shadows, which was coming from here. And we just airbrushed, we just airbrushed like some light on that side, though it doesn't really look like light looking at it. And then we duplicated that layer again and added just an overlay layer with like some more color to it. It's a bit more yellow than the other one, and added some small shiny details or highlights on her face. And then I don't know why I did this layer because it doesn't look so, it's not, it's taking away from the overall piece. Like it's okay, but it's taking away from it a bit. I think there. Yeah, and then we added a luminosity layer for like some of those effects. And we can even like, I would say she would look nice with some flowers on top, like these, something like that, just to add some interest or some depth to her. Let me see. Let's pick a nice palish. You could pick like a contrasting color, like if it's blue, sorry, like maybe some blue or something. I think that would like not contrasting color but a complementary color. I think that would look really nice. Where it has maybe like blue leaves. Like nobody is judging you for putting blue leaves on a pink girl. Like it's still, if it works, it works, you know. And you're the artist, so you get to decide. So maybe she has a wreath of like blue flowers, um, with like a more. I'd like this to be more pink, a very pale pink. Once again, keeping in with the color scheme. And I regret doing this on the same layer because like the blue flowers are gonna really fight me. But yeah, um, just something interesting and curious to add to her. I saw you were adding a tree. I'm not so clear on like what the tree was supposed to do, if it's like coming out of her head, if it's like a double exposure type of effect. So I would add like, I don't like that. But I would add like some flowers or something, like a wreath on her head. Um, and it doesn't, the nice thing about like finding your own style is it doesn't have to be super, it doesn't have to be super as detailed as her face. It could be like, just you see these squiggles that I'm drawing, it could be that simple and it still works because you're the artist and you get to decide. That's the fun part of it. You're showing people what you think is cool and what you would like them to see or take away from your art. And maybe I'll move this above the line art layer just so it stops like glitching over it a bit, and maybe I'll like lower the opacity just a smidge. So this entire thing is actually like all the color in one layer. This is, what is this? I think this is one of the sketch layers, but we don't even see it. So yeah, that would be, that's like my walkthrough of a quick sorry, of a quick process. I think you have a lot of like, I think your creativity is there, where like the way you've put like the tree behind her and you're experimenting with it and you've like gotten the image and then you like rotate it and place it over her face and behind her face, and you even like add this thing which you've done where it's like kind of brown, but you need to be clearer about the message you're doing, because art is about communicating messages and feelings to people. Sometimes it can just be fun, but like usually you'll find people's art pieces have a message. So if you figure out your message in the beginning here and you make sure to incorporate it and it stands strong in your art piece when it's like just a bunch of squiggles, then by the time you're getting here, then that message will still carry through in your final piece. So yeah, just be, my biggest takeaway is be intentional. Don't be afraid to iterate over things. Do multiple sketch layers. Don't be afraid to throw away your sketch if you don't like it and start over, or like just turn off the layer and move on to a new layer. Yeah, it's a learning process. So take the time, enjoy the learning. Yeah. And try and use the airbrush less. If you can't, just like avoid the airbrush completely. Like use this as your only brush which has like that variation of like opacity, where the, depending on how hard or how soft you press, like the lines, you know, they taper out like this thing where it fades out. But if you can't, use a hard brush where it doesn't have any of that variation. You can also use this which has a variation in thickness, but I would recommend just focusing on the hard brush. it'll feel unwieldy at first, but over time you'll be able to like you'll be able to like focus on like the silhouettes of things, and that'll make your art pieces way stronger. Because now, if your art piece can be determined what it's saying from just the silhouette, then like when it's a final rendered piece, sorry, my brain is short circuiting. When it's a final rendered piece, then people will be able to know from that exactly what you meant. They won't have to guess, they won't have to like make assumptions and things. Yeah, so intentional. You don't use the airbrush, and I forgot the other one. Spend a lot more time on your sketch. Yeah, that's it from me. I will send you this as a Photoshop file, and you can like take a look at the layers. I'll probably like label them before I do that. But yeah, all the best in your journey.